You are listening to the Wool Academy podcast. This is episode number 72.
Hello and welcome. My name is Elisabeth van Delden, and once a week we talk to an industry expert from the wool industry supply chain from farm to fashion and beyond, delivering strategies and insights to be successful in wool and showcasing those beautiful stories wool has to tell.
Today's guest is Matthias Boehme. Matthias is a consultant for natural fibers, including wool, and he helps businesses find the optimum solutions in regards to their textile supply chains. Today, Matthias will answer us a wide range of questions that many fashion brands and manufacturers need to deal with in their business. Hello, Matthias. It's so good to have you on the show.
Hello, Elisabeth. Many thanks for the invitation for this interview.
Great. Thank you for your time. And tell us a little bit more about yourself and the work that you do.
My company is called Textile Solutions and Consulting, whereby consulting was done in regard to sustainability standards evaluations, but I'm doing also sales and commercial structuring consulting. I've done also change management structures, or I have accompanied technical developments and innovations. And solutions has also a commercial component, whereby I sell as an agent fiber, yarns, and fabrics, and accompany companies in developing modifications, technical optimizations.
So, as I'm also working as a consultant, I know very well that we have a wide range of skills and interests. But tell me a little bit more about how did you get into the textile industry, and also how did you get involved in the wool industry in particular?
It's a long time ago. After my high school degree, I worked as a junior clerk in an import-export company here in Bremen. And when finishing that, I had basically three choices. One was to remain with the company. A second one was working for a German textile machinery manufacturer and look after their office affairs in the UK. And the third option was starting as a sales manager for wool byproducts at Bremer Wollkämmerei in those years. Strangely and only emotionally, the decision was taken in favor of Bremer Wollkämmerei, as my Queen of Heart of those days were here in Bremen, and I thought it might be quite difficult to continue the relationship from abroad. And ever after, I never succumbed to the temptations from other industries, like cotton or even others. Especially influenced, I was also by an event just possibly 2 weeks after I've started at BWK. We had a visitor from a famous fabric manufacturer in those days, Genslen and Völter, who was able, when looking at a lot of wool, greasy wool, was able to translate his visual impression into technical expertise, and has in front of his imagination, he has a fabric in mind he wanted to sell to a specific client, which impressed me really very, very much, and I always envied him a little bit to be able to do that. I hope I've at least learned a little bit to follow it.
So your first love led you to wool, but then you also fell in love with wool while you were working at the BWK. That's a nice story.
I worked until the turn of the millennium there, and decided in November 1999 to work ever after freelance with Hess Natur as my first consultancy client. My job at Hess Natur was particularly to transform fabrics or look for manufacturers who were able to transform fabrics collected by the designers into natural fiber components only, according to Hess Natur standards.
Okay, that sounds amazing, and you had lots of different interesting clients. But now let's get into the more technical questions we have prepared for today. So which areas of the fashion and textile market are particularly interesting for wool at the moment, and how do you see that changing in the future?
difficult look into the future, but for apparel, I would foresee a stabilization, hopefully moderate growth of demand with the usual fluctuations for in prices and availability. A still growing market I would foresee for sportswear, as not all areas and applications are really covered by wool or investigated enough to check whether wool is suitable for certain performance requirements. Also, a very interesting and growing market I foresee for outdoor equipment, specifically for coarser wool, if not neglected types, or types which are presently neglected, and applications I could see in protection, functional parts of equipment like backpacks, tents, shoes is the latest development already shown, and how perfect the functionality of wool could be used in this outlet. Also, interior, not everything is covered. One company I work for is doing very interesting decorative elements, which also have a very nice function in regard to noise reduction and well-feel area, making an interior room, transforming it into a well-feel area, really. But also totally unexplored applications I could foresee in technical and non-textile applications. Here we possibly could work together with you if of interest. We really would like to find textile institutes or entrepreneurs for project initiations.
Okay, that was a lot of many ideas, and I want to ask you. You mentioned wool for tents. How should I imagine that? How would wool fit, or how would wool be applied in a tent?
Like insulation.
Ah, okay.
Not all campers doing it in summer and favorable weather conditions, but we had a cooperation innovation village during one of the latest fairs, I think Outdoor 2015, and there was an interesting partner on our booth who offered tents suitable for colder outdoor conditions, and discussed it. At present, it's a price reason to cover a whole tent with an insulation made of wool, but there could be optimal solutions to be developed in future, like what I mentioned on the technical or non-textiles applications.
Okay, well, thank you for explaining that. And you already touched a little bit on the interiors, and as many listeners might know, currently the prices for crossbred wools are much lower compared to fine wools. And where do you see an opportunity for more demand for crossbred wools, so that hopefully wool prices for crossbreds would also rise more?
Yeah, if we talk lower prices, we mainly look at wool from meat sheep, not necessarily a well looked after Australian or New Zealand crossbred sheep. But I thought all these neglected qualities could be used in insulation protection for sportswear and outdoor equipment. We discovered just lately in our commercial business that a little bit of demand is growing up for to use crossbred wool in semi-formal styles. A jacket, for example, for men's or ladies, which you can wear with a pair of jeans, or not necessary for board meetings, but look well dressed without without appearing too formal. But also for interior textiles, I could see demand for crossbred wool. It's not really new, really. Woolen carpets have been there for a number of decades already. But I was thinking of decorative elements. I stayed in a hotel lately, which had a so-called bed mirror, the wall cover behind the bed made out of wool, which looked extremely attractive and gave also a very nice climate in the room and like a noise reduction inside. Fantastic atmosphere. And last not least, again, crossbred qualities could be perfectly suitable for technical applications. We have attended a conference in November where manufacturers introduced the audience to composite manufacturing, where various components of man-made materials together with natural materials and combination glues, bonding chemicals were brought together in order to do, for example, bathrooms inside of airplanes. And these sort of applications have not been really investigated how wool could find its way into it. And I think especially the demand for crossbred wool, the very much neglected part of 35 micron and stronger, could find a perfect outlet and have also a stabilization of prices, if not a moderate rise. In general, the crossbred wools should be looked at very, very positively, because the very high fluctuations of apparel types always implicate the danger that from a certain price point onwards, these type of the fine wools may be neglected or even removed from collections. With a stable, only moderately fluctuating price for crossbreds, the chances for continuous outlet and also continuous outlet could be guaranteed.
Okay, thank you so much for providing us such details and so many ideas for crossbred wools. Another topic I want to touch upon is traceability. How do you see the topic of traceability in the wool supply chain develop, and where are we heading towards?
I think it's a very, very important topic, though we observe that some companies at least gave the impression very subjectively now to show a certain reluctance to open up to complete transparency. But from forward-thinking retailers or brands, we recognize the more clear and authentic the messages about the origin can be provided, the better they rate their sales success. And it was interesting to see the presentation in the Green Room Voice area at ISPO this year, which showed some fantastic examples of it. And also from our commercial business, it's not wool in this case, but camel hair. We were able to win a larger contract together with a manufacturer, of course, and a retail chain, because the camel hair we were offering could be identified from a certain origin in Mongolia and not just being offered and sold as camel hair. And the region was also selected as being completely free of any chemical or pesticide residue from the environment. So it gave an authentic and clear message to the final consumer, which was very much appreciated by the retailer. And we can only hope that these sort of traceability options will grow. It can only help to build trust in wool and give a competitive advantage against specifically man-made fibers.
And do you think that this increased focus on traceability is also the reason why there's a trend for sustainability schemes and labels?
It comes very often in combination with it, and that really depends on the final retail outlet and the price range consumers may expect to find there. The higher the spending preparedness is, the higher the demand for sustainability standards will also come. But there will be always a general basis. And as we can see from the work with the Bündnis for nachhaltige Textilien. The big retailers are following this path very closely.
But at the same time, it's very confusing because there are so many labels, and also I hear a lot of manufacturers complain because it's so stressful and costly to, get certified. But do you think we will have even more labels and sustainability certifications in the future, or how do you see it develop going forward?
There may be more labels in future, even, but that could be followed by a tendency of reduction afterwards. We have followed this quite closely with the organic cotton labeling and certification. It really concentrates now on GOTS after some years with many different labels. But in the end, all retailers and brands are free to choose which solution they may think is the best one for their specific brand and brand philosophy. So if somebody is happy with even more specific and more detailed certification procedures, or even do it in-house, why not? And if it's a true and honest message to the client and can be traced or even checked by individuals, fine. It all supports the trust in the product.
And could you summarize maybe kind of what are the advantages and disadvantages of getting a certain license?
First, it gives the disadvantage some brands see is that they have to open up their complete sourcing and manufacturing and logistic chain. You can also look at this as a positive effect, because if you're open about that, the consumers know exactly that your operation is under control. It helps you also to have it under control yourself and look at possibly some weak points, whether technically or from certification or chemical use, whatever. So I would see in the final, if you take a final and holistic view, it can only be positive for the future. You can openly communicate. You can tell about the advantages. You can possibly even say there may be a few weak points, which under a holistic view are less important. And you really prevent to be criticized afterwards for it. And critics are very easily raised and are not easily forgotten. Therefore, I think certification should, in which form ever, should support a product and be of advantage to the brand in reaching, finally, good sales to the consumers.
And if a brand decides to get a specific label, let's say the GOTS organic wool certification, what would be the first step for them to start the process?
First of all, a strong will and the courage to do it, and possibly accepting that depending on the complexity of the product, it may take some time, and possibly also well-trodden paths have to be left. It needs a dedicated team for realization, a realistic planning, and a good cooperation within that team. We experienced a transformation process for a knitwear series at Hess Natur in a very really perfect cooperation with commercial consultation and textile technical qualification within the team, ending up in changing a complete series of knitwear into GOTS conform wool in all aspects, leftovers, price points, regions to be selected for the origin. An exciting example and very successful, as it's still in place even after more than 10 years now.
Wow. And how long did the project take?
between 3 and 6 months. I think 4.5, if I have to be exact.
Okay, cool.
Not really overly long, not really overly difficult, as it was one specific group of knitwear within the collection. And whenever companies are thinking about changing, whether from conventional wool to whatever standard they may choose, whether truly organic or also non-mules or whatever, it's always advisable to look at a specific group of products and not start with the most complex ones, but choose something where the supply chain is already known and can be easily influenced or transformed.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing your insights on the topic of certification. Now let's move on to another topic that you know a lot about, because you also advise companies on production costs. You help them identify if they should manufacture in Asia or in Europe. Can you give us an overview on this topic, please?
Yeah. As far as we got the impression from especially the latest sales project in cooperation with outdoor brands and fashion brands, we noticed that due to the many different processing sites in different countries in Asia, efficiency can get lost if only a part of the supply chain is in one country. Another part, like China, sourcing for fabrics and garment manufacturing may happen in Bangladesh or Vietnam. Very often, the companies forgot that Europe is much easier and even cheaper in logistics. Unfortunately, some processing stages are no longer only on a minimal basis available here anymore. So depending on complexity of design, style, and order volume, and repeat order schemes, production in Europe could be more advantageous than in China, for example, especially for mail order, which is a growing, or has the best growth rates in textile retails or garment retails.
And companies who still need to build up their supply chain, what do they need to consider in this regard?
Ideally, it's not an isolated monetary decision. I think a very much holistic view on all factors has to be taken. And the location of manufacturing can ideally be a part of the corporate social responsibility strategy of the brand. That should finally decide about it. But also simple commercial factors like mentioned before. Some companies work with one order window per year or per season, and others have the requirement to allow for repeat orders within very short notice time as part of their service to the client. Also, the costs of logistics and also the environmental impact of logistics are necessary to observe. So basically, ideally, a little bit of life cycle analysis has to be done specifically on products, and decision to be taken afterwards whether to produce in Asia or Europe.
And we had now many decades where manufacturing has been outsourced to Asia. Do you see a trend that manufacturing is coming back to Europe again?
It's possibly a little bit too early to call it a trend, but we noticed that early stage processing, especially for wool, has stabilized in Europe, and even new investments have been taken. We also noticed that some international operating brands, even within multinational corporations, are recognizing production close by to point of sales, discovered this as a marketing tool, and are studying options and available structures in Europe. For one of the products I'm working as a sales consultant, this is a clearly observable trend at present.
So, from a sustainability aspect, that we manufacture more locally to reduce the product footprint on the planet.
Yeah, but also to give the message to their final consumers and buyers. Look, we do as much as possible locally.
Earlier you mentioned that you are part of the German Alliance for Sustainable Textiles. Can you tell us more about this alliance and what are the goals?
I'm not really part of it, but I have done some consultancy work on standards and evaluations of standards for them, which was a very interesting work to do with a lot of new aspects and influences and knowledge gaining thereby. But as far as we got the impression, the original idea was to ensure work safety conditions and fair wages in Asian garment manufacturing sites. Initiated by after the terrible fire at the Bangladesh Rana Plaza factory. And the Alliance wanted to commit brands to support and guarantee more safe conditions and fair wages in future. But they took the whole initiative a step further and took a holistic view on all sustainability aspects and are looking now at responsible production of textiles and garments and have this identified as an overall goal. There are some challenges within these initiatives, like all multi-stakeholder initiatives. There's always the underlying danger to get lost in so-called minimal compromises or lowest common denominators. But the clear target is to come up with pragmatic solutions and improvement schemes valid and acceptable by a large number of brands.
And how does wool fit into this alliance, and what are the challenges?
We had the impression that wool was recognized as a bit more complicated or different than as the manufacturing from fiber to garment is completely different to other fibers like cotton or man-made. And we appreciated that they're trying to make it to bring it into common knowledge that woolen products are amongst the most environmentally friendly produced and manufactured goods. The input we could deliver into the evaluation were specifically the life cycle analysis done by Beverly Henry for Australian wool and Kjersti Kviset for Norwegian wool, which were in contrary to the negative impacts being publicated by the Higg Index and made by standards before.
And so how does the wool, so in accordance of the alliance, how should the wool supply chain change? So what would we have to change?
It would be very nice to see a closer cooperation between wool organizations and the alliance, and we have done some proposals for a closer cooperation in future. As far as standardizations and mutual acceptance of these standards, also pragmatic solutions have to be found, and which can only be achieved by an open dialogue between the organizations and business representatives. And a little side remark from our side, we would highly appreciate being able to support and accompany such a dialogue.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing those insights into the alliance. I have to apologize. My dog is barking in the background. He has his friend over, another dog, and they're both upset because I locked them outside of the office. And one dog is scratching the door and the other one is barking. But before we let the animals inside my office, I want to ask you, where can our listeners find out more about you, and also to get in contact and learn more about you?
Thank you very much for the interview first, and I can only invite interesting communication or cooperation partners to have a look at my LinkedIn profile or contact me via email as mentioned in the profile, but I'm also on Skype or phone available, and everything is mentioned in my profile there.
Excellent. And I will also make sure to link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes, and so that it's very easy for everyone to find you. Well, thank you so much, Matthias, for your time. I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us, and to many exciting new projects in the future.
Thanks a lot to you as well. We feel honored being invited for this interview, and hope to have been able to give some interesting insights.
Yes, indeed.
Thanks again.
Thank you, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this interview with Matthias Boehme. Apologies once again for my dog barking in the background. If you want to find out more about Matthias and the topics that he covered today, then head on over to the show notes at elisabethvandelden.com/072. There you can find a lot of more background on Matthias and the topics he covered. Head on over to elisabethvandelden.com/072. If you are active on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn, then make sure to follow us on these platforms so that you are always alerted when a new podcast is coming out. I look forward to connecting with you there. Thank you for listening. Talk to you again next week, and bye for now.